Dr. Adil, he is a specialist member of the Aero data for loads groups at Airbus UK. He's also an active member of the World Association for Sudanese or for Sustainable Development, WASD, and associate editor of the journal, The World Review of Science, Technology and Sustainable Development. His current research interest covers aircraft safety as well as airport capacity planning issues. Dr. Adil holds a Bachelor in Mechanical Engineering from the University of Khartoum, a Master's and Doctoral from the University of Manchester Institute of Science and Technology. تفضل دكتور عادل. Okay, you already almost, I think you shared your screen.
Yes,
so
I shared it. Can you see it?
Thank you.
And you
Absolutely.
can hear me?
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Dr. Lohman. It's great actually to see your face for the first time, although I heard your name before. And
Yeah,
everybody
just a side
here.
note, I'm not a doctor. I'm just what do you call it? I hold a master's of architecture.
Well, it is the expertise that really counts, not the qualification.
Okay, shukran.
Thanks.
Okay.
And welcome everybody, wherever you are, whether it's the morning, afternoon, or whatsoever, because I know we have diverse sort of audience today. So I'll try to rush the things in because of the time. And I was actually preparing a very good, big presentation, but I will not have the chance to go through it all, unfortunately. But I will start with, just giving introduction and saying why, in my view, industry is is important component of the solution for the Sudanese economic problems today, and what are the requirements for rebuilding industrial sector and the way forward. If I have time, I'll give some background about the history of industrial strategy in Sudan and how to integrate it in NDS and so on. But let us start with the introduction first. So the performance of the Sudanese economy is pretty dismal. This is not my view. This is actually the view of all the economists in the world today. The GDP per capita today is about 500 US dollars. This is the same level as it was in 1980. So it can show you that we didn't really move with times. Industrial value added to economy is less than 3%. This is even 1/4 of the level of 1980. So no wonder that, the Sudanese economy is going downhill. So why? In addition to corruption and bad governance related to political instability, lack of national industrial strategy is a major reason for the weak performance of the economy. And this is my view. Hence, to get out of poverty and put the country's economic growth back on track, the Sudan needs to formulate a national development plan with industry at its heart and main focus. What does this mean? Let us put it in context. If you put this in context, you will find that industry value added, as I said, to the GDP is less than 3%. Agricultural lands in Sudan, which are vast, they are underused. Live animals stocks are exported instead of processed meat or leather. Minerals, including gold, return of export to the national treasury is next to nil. There is poor physical and informational infrastructure. All these are actually symptoms of lack of industrial investment. Therefore, we need quality industrial investment to rescue the economy. But why industry? Why not something else? Let us have a quick look at how the industry actually performed in Sudan historically. Well, just let us take the last 20 years or so. At the year 2000, we have a reasonable percentage to the GDP of about 20%. And there is a flourishing time until 2010 for the industrial sector with reasonable values here. And I'm saying reasonable because it is comparable with the international standard and figures at that time. And by the way, just as for those who are not really engineers, we can actually generally divide industry into two. manufacturing, such like, you know, textile or sugar industry and non-manufacturing like construction or telecommunications and so on. And this is the difference between the two curves. This is all the industry put together, and this is the manufacturing part of it. Now, as I said, we have healthy sort of figures until 2010. And then after that, things started to go downhill until it went down to 3% in 2015, and it is to 2% today. If you compare this with the performance of the economy, this is the GDP per capita, you will see that when we have good industrial figures, we have the GDP is going up. And when the industry collapsed, the economy has collapsed as well. It's gone downhill very, very quickly. Therefore, we can conclude that flourishing industrial sector is equal to healthy economy. And this is why I'm talking about why industry. So, and to put the economic case for the industry, first of all, let us remember that, you know, the industrial process stands on 3 legs. We must have industrial strategy to set the vision, to set the objectives, the priorities, and then from that strategy, you have to draw industrial policy, which is responsible for creating an investment attractive environment for investors to come and share, you know, your objectives and your strategy. And to put those objectives in implementation, you need a good industrial plan. All these should actually act as part of our national development strategy or national development plan, and it has to be integrated into it. Additionally, the industry helps the country to do what? To accumulate capital, provide employment, reach self-sufficiency of produced goods, increase foreign currency reserves, and it also offers a viable path for skill and technology development and transfer. It also incentivizes and stimulates infrastructure development. So in short, we can say that it is a prime mover for the economy. But how it works? How does it work in practice? I'm putting here an example of cotton as one of our major, you know, agricultural products. If you actually export cotton as raw material, you will get something like 1,600 US dollars per metric ton. However, if you go through the processing stages, you make it fiber, yarn, and then, you know, fabrics, until you produce goods that is good for our consumption, you can actually increase that value by about 40-folds. And that is a huge contribution of industry to the value of your agricultural product. And this is just an example. Actually, if you take cotton for the United States of America, you will see that its contribution to the American economy is about $35 billion. And in this process, it has also supported about 500,000 jobs. Actually, the debt of the Sudan today is about 56 billion. So we can actually, if we have similar thing from cotton alone in the Sudan, we can actually pay back all our debts in 2 years. And let alone America. I mean, and forget about cotton. Let us speak about industry in general. Let us talk about China. Manufacturing has been the engine of overall resurgence of China for the last 30 years. In fact, it helped China to have 10% economic growth for the last 30 years, year in, year out. And as a result, actually, China has overtaken the United States of America as the largest economy in the world in 2019. So you cannot really underestimate the case for industry. But when you come to compare to the Sudan, what is the impact of industry on the Sudanese economy? As I put it before, it has it had reasonable contribution in the early 200 to 210, but after that, it collapsed completely. Now, in employment, the industry has got 3% share of employment, whereas manufacturing 1.7. These are very small figures. These are nothing. The impact is non-existent, particularly if you compare this with the rest of the world. Look at what is happening in the world. These green figures here, this is for industry and this is for manufacturing. And if you just compare it with the low-income countries, then effectively the orange one is here for the industry and this one for manufacturing. So this immediately shows you that the impact of the industry in the Sudan, whether in the actual GDP or on the left, on the employment market, is just non-existent. And that is a crime. But we are talking, this is why we are talking about rebuilding the industrial sector, because in the 2000 to 2010, I said we had healthy period with reasonable number for manufacturing and industry general. Now we need to rebuild the sector, to contribute to our economy. But what do we need to do that? We need to create the investment attractive environment. What does that mean? I alluded before. I said that this is a function of the industrial policy, but what does it mean in practice? It means you have to have political stability and fighting corruption. You have to have a clear industrial strategy and priorities. You should have clear policies to ease access to finance at reasonable cost to investors, as well as incentives through the taxation policy. In this process, while planning for it, while thinking about it, you should not forget the environment and you should not forget the UN 2030 SDG goals and how to achieve them. And that is not just for luxury. That is important if you want to attract investors. They will come to the country and check for these things and see, are they there? Tick. If not, they will not come. They are not charity. They will not give you donations. They are investors, as the council said early in the first session. It is also important for investors to see these policies in place and working in practice before expecting them to flock to the country. And more importantly, remember these things, these requirements. This is a package, not piecemeal measures. You cannot say, oh, forget about the political stability. Let me start with, clear policy for investment, or do industrial strategy first, and so on. It will not work. You have to try this as a package. If it can work as piecemeal, it would have worked in the last 30 years for, al-Bashir regime. He tried everything apart from putting things together as a package. You cannot avoid that. So the way forward is therefore to start with political stability and good governance with a strong anti-corruption drive. And this is essential in order to path for sustainable development and legislate for supportive policies and regulations to guide and monitor fair and strategic public and foreign investment. This alone has helped Ethiopia to increase their GDP by tenfold in 10 years. Between the years 2007, 2017, the GDP of Ethiopia has increased 10 times, all through the political stability, good governance, with a strong anti-corruption drive. So don't underestimate the power of political stability and fighting corruption. Then, once you do that, you have to formulate a national development strategy and plan. And that is important to set the vision, determine the priorities, guide the economy along the right path of sustainable development. And also, it gives economy the required stability in terms of planning and legislation in the short, medium, and long term. And this, as you know, again, the council said earlier on, we are not talking about 5 years or 10 years. We are talking about a strategy for 20, 30, 50 years. This, once you have it, with the right consultation with the experts, not politicians, then effectively you will take it out of the political arena. It will not be for this party to change the strategy today and tomorrow and so on. It will be something stable there, and it will guide, you know, the economy along the long term as well. So industrialization must be at the heart of a national development plan. And that is because it needs coordination between all the governmental departments, between every sector in the society. And this is how it can tackle the economic and wider sustainable development issues facing the country. You cannot take them piecemeal. You have to take everything together and act on them. Now, quickly, I will give, you know, where have we been for the last 65 years? Where are the, you know, industrial strategies? Did we have any? I will just give a very brief short look at what happened. In 1948, actually the colonizer wanted to build the Sinnar Dam. So they built a cement factory there, okay, to help the, you know, building the dam. What happened after building the dam? They closed down the factory. Why? Because they are not interested in any industrial strategy for the Sudan. It was there just to help them, you know, to get the cement, do the dam, and that is it. They are not interested in any form of industrial strategy. Between 1956 and 1969, industry was encouraged, yes, but there is no strategy as such. It wasn't driven by any strategy. There are private sector initiatives here and there. And then between 1969 and 1989, and that is dominated by Nimeri sort of days, where we have seen a swinging pendulum from nationalization, because in 1969, Nimeri came supported by the Communist Party and the socialist parties in the Sudan. And then in 1983, he changed direction completely with the help of the Islamists at the time. And can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. And that actually
yes, we hear you, Adil. We hear you.
Excellent. And then he moved from total nationalization to full liberalization. The last 30 years, which is dominated by al-Bashir time, 1989, 20, then that was all littered by wrong policies, mismanagement, favoritism, corruption. I would actually summarize all this and call it robbery and monopoly policies, which is actually, in short, in Sudan, we call it siyasat al-tamkeen policy. So needless to say, all these policies have failed completely. Why? Due to lack of strategic vision and direction, bad governance, wrong policies, mismanagement, corruption, and so on. So, as I said earlier, we have to integrate the national, the industrial strategy into a national development strategy or plan. But what would be the structure of that? Look at this. This is a structure of the national development strategy. You have the national development strategy, which should be owned by the prime minister. And then you can have sub-strategies for human resources, for economic development, for, you know, environment, for law and peace, for whatever, and you can count as many as you like. Each of these will actually include certain sectors of the economy and society. And then you need to integrate between these sectors, both vertically and, more importantly, also horizontally. This is important to ensure sustainability and break silos. And to do this, you need to integrate the whole strategy together, and therefore you have to have a council for strategic implementation, and this should be led by the prime minister. If you ask me where's the industry in this, I will point you to this economic development strategy, and the industrial strategy would be here at the heart of your national development strategy. Talking about industrial strategy, how can I know whether this is a successful one or not? And I'm going to give you, the view, not my view, but the view of the British Institute for Engineering and Technology, who actually gave this sort of elements as the main ingredients of successful strategy for industry. I will add to them that, the strategy has to be written in clear, concise language to provide clarity and attract investors. And it should also have detailed KPIs, key performance indicators. Without them, that is not a strategy. That is just ink on paper. And it must be based on smart objectives. A smart objective, smart here means specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely. It should also be based on social, cultural, and economic, industrial structure of the country. So it should be indigenous to its environment. And it should be cross-departmental responsibilities. As I said before, this is why you need the integration to give the coordination and to ensure that the whole country is moving together. And therefore, to ensure that, because we are talking about 50 years, about, at least 30, 50 years, then effectively you need to have regular reviews, which has to be done by the experts, not politicians. And if you have that, this strategy is going to form the basis and justification for the industrial policy, which is responsible for creating the investment attractive environment. Why do we need investors? Why do we need to attract them? Remember that sustainable industrial development is not cheap. So building competitive industrial sector, it requires heavy investment in infrastructure, research and development, technology transfer, training. It also needs both human and capital resources. Now, the government cannot do all this by itself. It cannot do it alone. It has to be held by genuine partnership with private and foreign investors. By the way, here I should emphasize that all the things which I said before about, political stability, about, fighting corruption, about forming the industrial strategy to set the priorities and so on, the industrial policies, this is the work of the government alone. And by the way, it doesn't cost any money. But when it comes to implementing the industrial plan, then you need actually the investors to help you in that part, which we are not there yet, because we don't have a plan in the first place. So this is actually a model of how we can actually attract investors and partnership. And well, the main source of cash nowadays in the Sudan is the diaspora. Now, this is a model, to have a partnership between the diaspora, the Sudanese government or the country of origin, wherever they are, and the host country where they actually work at the moment, or the foreign investors from wherever they are. When you get all these three parties in a partnership, you integrate the efforts, then you can have a very successful model for industrial investment. I have said, I have written about this, in another paper in 2018. If you want to go back to that model and see how it works in practice, I will refer you to that instead of spending time now on it. So I will conclude now by saying that to get out of the poverty, Sudan needs to formulate a national development plan with industry at its heart and main focus. Industrialization is key to the Sudan and driving the economic development of the country. I have given the steps which need for industrialization, from good governance, political stability, then formulating the industrial strategy and vision, and the IP, which is industrial policy, and the right environment for sustainable development. However, industrial development is not cheap. It needs both capital and human resources. The government cannot do it alone. It has to be helped by genuine PPP or public-private partnership. Additionally, considerations required for environment and achieving the UN 2030 SDGs. Thank you very much for listening.
بنحلم بفضاء أوسع، بنحلم بزمن أجمل، بلاد ميلاد، بلاد ميلاد. بنحلم بفضاء أوسع، بنحلم بزمن أجمل، بلاد ميلاد، بلاد ممتد لحد حدود الحد، وطن لا فيه